A distress signal sliced through the static of United Coalition channels. It came from a border world, under siege, its voice strained with desperation. The message was brief. The defenders were outnumbered. Their shields were failing. They pleaded for help from any nearby allied force. They never expected Earth to answer. The human relief ship, a shadow against the stars, dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a burning moon. Scans painted a grim picture. Infrastructure was collapsing across the planet. Enemy forces had already breached the capital's main defensive line. The alien civilians were huddled in shelters, but their military positions were shattered and broken. Without a moment's delay, human strike teams deployed. Their boots hit the ground in the middle of an active bombardment. Dust and debris filled the air. Shockwaves hammered against their armor, but they advanced without hesitation. The local commanders, weary and defeated, finally reached the human positions. They expected to discuss evacuation plans, to save who they could. Instead, the human leaders spread a holographic field map across the ruined ground. With rapid, precise gestures, they marked enemy weaknesses, command structures, and logistical choke points. Before the locals could even process the information, the humans were moving, advancing toward the front line, while the alien soldiers struggled to keep up. The first clash erupted inside a shattered transit hub. Enemy soldiers had fortified the upper platforms, raining fire down on the levels below. The locals saw an unbreakable position. The humans saw a puzzle. Squads moved like ghosts through the lower service tunnels. Unseen and unheard, they scaled maintenance ladders, their movements fluid and practiced. With a single-controlled explosive charge, they breached the platform door. The enemy line, caught completely by surprise, collapsed in seconds. Survivors vanished into the smoke and debris, their morale broken. The local commanders watched the live footage, their confusion mounting. They had sent a signal asking for help, for reinforcements to bolster their failing defense. What they received looked nothing like any standard military unit they had ever seen. The humans pushed deeper, reclaiming contested zones street by street. They fought in the tight confines of ruined buildings, using the terrain with a ruthless, predatory efficiency. They moved through fire and explosions like they had trained for something far worse. It was because the next battleground was a collapsed medical district. Enemy units had cornered a large group of civilians inside a damaged triage hall. A massacre seemed imminent. This time, human medics entered first, their armor painted with stark white crosses. Under active fire, they began stabilizing the wounded, their hands steady, their voices calm. As the medics worked, human infantry established a hard perimeter, a wall of steel and disciplined fire. The enemy tried to break through, throwing wave after wave against the human line. Each attempt was met with precise, controlled volleys that cut them down. While the infantry held the line, the civilians were guided out through maintenance tunnels and sewer systems. The enemy, now frustrated and desperate, began to regroup. They pushed the heavy armored walkers toward the city's industrial ring, hoping their superior firepower would finally crush the strange new defenders. They were wrong. Human combat engineers, using scavenged parts, rigged industrial thermal lances to slice through the walkers' thick plating. At the same time, infantry units scaled the massive machines with magnetic grips, climbing their legs and torsos like insects. They neutralized the core systems manually, planting charges directly on critical components. One by one, the mechanical titans toppled, their metallic bodies crashing to the ground with a force that made the very earth tremble. The local commanders watched in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just warfare. It was a form of problem-solving, executed with brutal precision. Ursa's infamous Deathworld conditioning had produced fighters who treated the battlefield not as a place of desperation and fear, but as a complex equation that they were born to solve. As night fell, the enemy launched a final all-or-nothing push. They threw everything they had left at the capital bunker, hoping to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers. Human heavy weapons teams met them in the open fields. The air became a storm of plasma, shrapnel, and concussive shockwaves. But through it all, the human line advanced at a steady, relentless pace. They did not retreat. They did not falter. They struck with a cold, calculated fury. The enemy line fractured, then broke. Panic spread like a virus through their ranks, and the entire offensive collapsed into a chaotic retreat. When dawn finally broke, the battlefield was silent, save for the quiet hum of human scanning drones cataloging the aftermath. The local defense officers approached the human commander, their expressions a mix of awe and trepidation. They expected a grand speech, a declaration of victory. The commander simply turned to them and delivered a clipped, factual report. The threat was neutralized. Damage zones were stabilized. All survivors were secured. Mission complete. Slowly, cautiously, the civilians began to emerge from their bunkers and shelters. They stared at the human soldiers standing guard, their faces unreadable behind their helmets. They saw the smoking wreckage of the enemy army. They felt the silence of a city that was, for the first time in days, safe. They had asked for help. They had expected a rescue, a fighting retreat to save a fraction of their people. What they received was something else entirely. They got Earth's death, beings forged in a crucible of lethality, who didn't understand the concept of an unwinnable fight. They did not arrive to run. They arrived to end the threat, permanently. The signal the locals sent had not been a request for warriors. It had been a desperate plea for survival, and humans had delivered that survival through overwhelming force, flawless precision, and a relentless forward momentum that nothing could stop. In the weeks and months that followed, the story spread through the nearby systems. A new legend was born. And now, when a world finds itself on the brink, outmatched and desperate, they send their call for help out into the void. And they pray. They pray that the Deathworlders will answer again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time.